Have you ever woken up feeling as though 1,000 half-finished thoughts are pressing against your skull, vying for your attention before your feet even touch the floor? I remember the days when my mind felt like a cluttered desk piled high, with unopened letters, broken pens, and sticky notes whose meaning I had long since forgotten. In those moments, I realized that mental clutter is not simply an inconvenience. It is the silent saboteur of focus, creativity, and peace. Today, I invite you on a journey to recognize that hidden debris, to understand how it unsettles your clarity, and to learn practical rituals that will help you reclaim the space in your own mind. When I began studying the habits of the world's most productive and creative minds, one truth stood out above all others. Simplicity of thought breeds power of action. We often pride ourselves on juggling dozens of ideas at once, believing that mental gymnastics equal genius. Yet this constant churn leaves us exhausted and unfocused. In this talk, I will share the exact strategies I've distilled from decades of research and personal practice, techniques that anyone can use to sift through the noise, dismiss what no longer serves, and build a foundation of clear, intentional thinking. By the end of these first few minutes, you will understand not only why detoxing your mind matters, but also what you stand to gain: more energy, deeper insight, and the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing exactly where your mind is pointed. Before we dive into specific tips, I want you to make a promise. You will not only listen, but you will also act. This is not a seminar about passivity. It is an invitation to take back control of your most precious resource, your own mind. As we move through each section together, imagine yourself deliberately peeling away layers of mental fog, step by step. Know that, in this moment alone, you have already taken your first conscious breath toward a clearer, stronger mind. Have you ever heard of invisible clutter that clouds your clarity? When I pause for a moment and listen to the inner chatter of my mind, I often discover a dissonant chorus of unfinished thoughts battling for my attention. I recall mornings when I would open my eyes only to be greeted by a flood of worries about yesterday's conversation, anxieties about tomorrow's obligations, and half-formed ideas I'd failed to pursue. It felt as though each stray thought was a whisper demanding urgent notice, and before I knew it, my mental landscape was crowded, chaotic, and impossible to navigate. In those early days of my personal transformation, I learned that acknowledging this invisible clutter is the first act of liberation. By shining a light on those nagging fragments, be they regrets, what-ifs, or scattered inspirations, I began to see that they were not signals of progress, but the debris of a mind in disrepair. As I explored further, I noticed that this hidden debris often accumulates unnoticed, like dust settling on a mahogany desk until the surface itself loses its luster. Each unaddressed worry or unrecorded idea settles into the corners of our psyche, robbing us of the mental real estate needed for true innovation and peace. I have spoken with entrepreneurs who confessed their greatest breakthroughs came only after they made peace with the mental noise they'd been carrying for years. Somewhere between unfinished projects and unexpressed emotions lies the root of our distraction. Recognizing this pattern invites us to approach our mind as we would a room in need of tidying. First, survey every corner, then decide what to keep and what to release. In my own journey, I found that the most powerful shift came the moment I stopped resisting the clutter and instead looked at it as a guidebook. Every persistent thought pointed to a deeper concern or an untapped opportunity. By gently observing these thought fragments without judgment, I discovered their hidden messages: unresolved grief seeking acknowledgement, a creative spark asking for action, or a fear craving understanding. This mindful awareness transformed my relationship with mental clutter. It ceased to be an enemy to fight and became a teacher revealing where my attention was most needed. As you reflect on your own inner landscape, imagine shining a spotlight into the darker corners of your mind, illuminating the debris that has been silently shaping your days. Only then can you decide which elements deserve your focus and which ones are ready to be cleared away. Why do you keep useless thoughts? They steal your energy. I have often likened my early mental habits to a household so filled with possessions that every doorway groans under the weight of accumulated junk. In the same way that a physical hoarder clings to newspapers, trinkets, and broken treasures, My mind was collecting stray worries, outdated assumptions, and fleeting fantasies, believing that each held some hidden value. I discovered that this impulse to retain every thought, even those long past their usefulness, was rooted in a deep-seated fear of loss, the fear that dismissing a single idea might mean overlooking a breakthrough, or that letting go of an old regret might erase the lessons learned. Over time, however, I realized that the real tragedy of cognitive hoarding is not the pile itself, but the toll it takes on our vitality. Each useless thought demands attention, drains willpower, and leaves us depleted before we even begin our day. As I studied the mechanics of focus and productivity, I encountered brilliant minds who thrive precisely because they practice selective mental ownership. These individuals treated ideas like valuable art pieces. They displayed only what inspired and let the rest move on. This reframing taught me that creativity does not flourish in a crowded room, but in a carefully curated gallery where each painting has room to breathe. The myth that more ideas equal more creativity crumbles when we observe the patterns of true innovators. They choose few concepts, refine them mercilessly, and discard the rest without remorse. In recognizing this truth, I witnessed a profound shift in my own energy levels. As the mental junk cleared away, I felt lighter, more agile in thought, and astonishingly more capable of sustained concentration. That I came to understand that cognitive hoarding is not a badge of honor, but a silent drain on our emotional reserves. When the mind is overburdened, even small decisions become monumental tasks, for every choice must navigate through tangled webs of old doubts and unnecessary options. In my personal practice, I began to catalog intrusive thoughts as if they were objects in a cluttered attic, naming them, examining their origin, and deciding whether they truly served my higher purpose. This process revealed a surprising benefit. By relinquishing the trivial, I found an expanded capacity for the essential. My sense of calm deepened, creativity flowed more freely, and the energy I once wasted wrestling with inconsequential ideas was now available for meaningful action. In embracing the art of mindful mental curation, I transformed hoarding into liberation. And that transformation is at the heart of reclaiming our most precious resource, our focused attention. Hack 1. The 5-3-1 Mental Purge Ritual. When I first encountered the overwhelming swirl of thoughts that crowded my mind, I realized that without a clear, repeatable practice, I would never regain control of my mental space. That insight led me to develop what I call the 5-3-1 Mental Purge Ritual, a simple yet profoundly effective daily habit. Each morning, I take a moment with pen and paper and list the 5 persistent thoughts that insist on my attention, whether they are worries about a meeting, ideas for a new project, or echoes of yesterday's regrets. As I write, I notice how each thought tugs at my focus, and I allow myself to acknowledge its presence fully without judgment or resistance. With the list complete, I circle the 3 thoughts that feel most urgent or meaningful in that very moment. This selection process brings clarity, forcing me to confront what truly deserves my energy today rather than scattering my efforts across every passing notion. As I examine each circled thought, I ask myself, what deeper need or opportunity does this thought point to? In that questioning, I often uncover insights I would have missed if I tried to address everything at once. The act of circling 3 thoughts transforms a chaotic flood into a focused stream, and already I sense a shift in my mental landscape. From clutter to concentrated potential, the final step asks for commitment to one actionable release. I choose the single thought that, if I let it go through a small action, will bring the greatest relief or progress. Perhaps it means sending a brief email to settle a lingering concern, scheduling a 10-minute block to sketch out an idea, or consciously forgiving myself for an old mistake by jotting a note of self-compassion. This choice is not about accomplishing a grand task. It is about demonstrating to my mind that I am willing to act, that I respect its nudges, and that I will not allow thoughts to linger indefinitely without resolution. When I complete that one action, I feel a lightness, as though a window has been opened in my mind, letting fresh air circulate through previously stagnant corners. Over the weeks, The 5-3-1 mental purge ritual has become the cornerstone of my day. It takes less than 5 minutes, yet its effects reverberate for hours afterward. I sense a newfound calm, an ability to direct my attention toward the tasks that matter most, and a growing confidence in my capacity to handle whatever arises. As you consider this ritual, imagine the peace that comes when you treat your mind as you would your home. You clear away the debris, you honor what remains, and you take a single, deliberate action to keep the space open and vibrant that lets clear old neural pathways that I have come to appreciate that our brains are not fixed machines, but malleable landscapes shaped by the trails we walk most often. Over years of rehearsing the same worries, reliving past mistakes, or imagining future failures, we carve deep grooves in our neural terrain, creating highways that funnel us inevitably toward anxiety and self-doubt. I realized that to escape these worn routes, I needed more than willpower. I needed a reset. Guided by the science of neuroplasticity, I designed a practice that combines intentional breathwork with purpose-driven affirmations, a pairing that gradually weakens the outdated circuits and lays down fresh pathways of clarity and calm. Each evening, I settle into a quiet space and breathe deeply, counting 4 seconds in, holding for 2, and exhaling over 6, allowing each breath to dissolve the tension that has accumulated through the day. As I do this, I set a clear intention, release the grip of yesterday's regrets, and open to tomorrow's possibilities. In that moment, I feel the old pathways soften, as if softened clay yielding under gentle pressure. I then speak a simple affirmation aloud. I choose thoughts that serve my highest purpose, anchoring the new neural blueprint I wish to create. Over time, this ritual rewrites the mind's habitual script, shifting the default from mental clutter to deliberate focus. I remember the first morning after a week of this practice. I awoke with surprising stillness, as though my mind's marathon had paused. The usual onslaught of scattered thoughts was replaced by a quiet confidence, a sense that I could choose where my attention flowed rather than being carried away by the current. That transformation did not happen overnight, but each session of breath and intention added a brick to the foundation of a more resilient mind. By embracing the power of neuroplasticity, I reclaimed the steering wheel of my thoughts, guiding them toward clarity instead of allowing them to wander aimlessly through worn-out grooves. Hack 2. Digital sunset to silence digital noise. As the evening light fades and digital glow takes over, I often find my mind still flickering with the day's relentless notifications. Emails begging for attention, social feeds promising one more scroll, and news alerts that edge me toward anxiety. I discovered that this digital onslaught doesn't simply disturb our sleep, it fractures our mental sanctuary long before bedtime. Recognizing the need to reclaim that sanctuary led me to develop what I call the digital sunset protocol, a structured ritual that gradually dims the screen-lit chaos and frees the mind to transition into restorative calm. Each night, I begin the process 2 hours before I intend to sleep. First, I silence non-essential notifications, allowing only the calls and messages that truly matter. This initial step feels like closing a door on the world's demands, creating a buffer zone where my mind can start to unwind. 1 hour before bedtime, I switch devices into night mode and reduce blue light, acknowledging that the physiological impact of screens can undermine the very rest I'm seeking. At this point, I move away from content consumption and toward mindful reflection, reviewing the day's highlights, jotting down any lingering thoughts in a journal, and setting gentle intentions for tomorrow. 30 minutes before lights out, I power down all screens entirely. In this screen-free interval, I engage in a simple ritual. I brew a warm herbal tea or perform gentle stretching, allowing my senses to shift away from pixels and vibrations. In this quiet space, my mind recalibrates. The habitual tug of digital noise grows faint, and a deeper level of awareness emerges. I find myself breathing more fully, settling into a restful rhythm that carries me seamlessly to sleep. Over time, this digital sunset ritual has become a cornerstone of my evening, transforming the hours before rest from a battleground of information overload into a haven of intentional calm. As the screen fades to black, my mind follows suit, moving from scattered thoughts to a singular openness that welcomes deep, rejuvenating sleep. In honoring this ritual, I not only protect my mental clarity, but also set the stage for a brighter, more focused morning. Proof that sometimes the most powerful action is simply choosing to disconnect. You have to release unprocessed feelings to in the quiet moments between tasks. I often sense an undercurrent of tension that seems to arise from nowhere, yet I know its origin lies in feelings I have neglected to acknowledge. Over years of prioritizing productivity and achievement, I unwittingly relegated emotions like anger, sadness, and fear to the shadows of my mind, believing that exposing them would slow me down. Instead, they accumulated like unseen debris, weighing on my spirit and clouding my clarity. I learned that unprocessed emotions behave much like dust beneath a carpet, out of sight but ever present, and capable of triggering unrest at the slightest disturbance. As I began to confront this emotional residue, I discovered a simple yet profound release. A 2-minute excavation that invites each feeling to surface and depart. Sitting comfortably, I close my eyes and breathe deeply, turning my attention inward to notice any tension or unrest. When I sense a specific emotion rising, perhaps the heaviness of regret or the sharp edge of frustration, I give it a name, whispering, "This is fear," or "This is disappointment." Naming the feeling brings it into the light, stripping it of its power to fester in secrecy. With each breath, I imagine that emotion as a physical weight lifting from my chest, carried away on the exhale until nothing remains but a gentle openness that I recall an afternoon when, amidst a demanding project, I paused and realized that irritation toward a colleague was more than a passing annoyance. It was a reflection of my own unspoken boundaries. In that moment of quiet recognition, I allowed myself to feel the heat of that anger fully, to trace it back to the unmet expectations I had ignored. As I breathed and acknowledged its source, the tension dissolved into insight, revealing not only relief but a path toward healthier communication. This act of emotional excavation transformed strain into self-awareness, clearing space for empathy, creativity, and genuine connection. Over time, this ritual of naming and releasing has become the cornerstone of my emotional hygiene, ensuring that debris does not accumulate to the point of suffocating my sense of purpose. Hack 3. The 1-minute mind sweep throughout the day. Midday often brings a familiar sense of overwhelm, as though I have sprinted through hours of emails, meetings, and decisions only to reach a wall of scattered thoughts and unfinished tasks. In those moments, I found that waiting until evening to process the chaos was too late. My mind required regular checkpoints to stay clear. That realization led me to the 1-minute mind sweep, a brief ritual I perform every 60 minutes to capture lingering thoughts before they drift into oblivion. By treating each hour as a small container for ideas, worries, and to-dos, I avoid the avalanche of mental clutter that otherwise accumulates unnoticed. At the top of each hour, I pause whatever I'm doing, typing an email, reviewing a report, or preparing for a call, and I set a timer for 60 seconds. During that short interval, I pull out a small notebook or open a note-taking app and jot down any thought that has been nagging at the edges of my focus. Perhaps it's a question I need to research, a follow-up message that requires clarity, or a fleeting insight that might spark tomorrow's strategy. I write each item succinctly, without elaboration or judgment, allowing the act of recording to shift the thought from my mind into external storage. As the seconds tick away, I notice a remarkable shift. The tightness in my head loosens, and I feel a subtle surge of mental space. With a clean slate, I return to the task at hand with renewed concentration, confident that nothing vital has slipped through the cracks. The 1-minute mind sweep is not about capturing every trivial detail. Rather, it is an intentional moment of acknowledgement that grants permission for thoughts to exist without clinging to me. Over time, this practice trains the mind to release stray ideas quickly, preventing the backlog that leads to stress and decision fatigue. I have experimented with different tools, digital timers, paper journals, even voice memos, and found that the medium matters less than the commitment to the interruption itself. What counts is the deliberate pause, the act of honoring each thought for exactly 60 seconds before letting it go. In embracing this micro-pause throughout my day, I transformed what once felt like an unrelenting mental treadmill into a rhythm of productive focus and timely release. As you integrate this ritual into your routine, notice how the simple cadence of 1-minute sweeps can turn a chaotic mind into a well-tuned instrument of clarity and purpose. I reflect on our journey together, from uncovering the invisible clutter that clouds our clarity to mastering the 1-minute mind sweep. I am reminded that true transformation begins the moment we choose to honor our mental space. We have shone light on the thought fragments that hijack our focus, confronted the compulsive urge to hoard ideas, and embraced simple yet powerful rituals like the 5-3-1 mental purge and the neuroplasticity reset to rewrite our habitual patterns. We learned how a deliberate digital sunset can silence the cacophony of screens and how naming our emotions frees us from the debris of unprocessed feelings. Finally, by pausing each hour to sweep away lingering thoughts, we reclaimed control over our attention and energy. I know that lasting change does not happen in a single moment, but rather through consistent, intentional steps. You have now experienced the essence of 7 practical strategies designed to detox your mind and eliminate mental clutter. The choice before you is simple. Commit to one of these practices today, integrate it into your routine, and observe how it begins to widen the space in your mind for creativity, peace, and purposeful action. Decide now who you will be and how you will show up in your own life. Will you allow the weight of past regrets and future anxieties to dictate your direction, or will you step forward with a clear, focused mind? The first step is yours to take. Choose one ritual, perform it with intention, and feel the gentle shift as your mental landscape opens to new possibilities. Your mind is your most precious asset. Treat it with the care it deserves, and watch as every aspect of your life transforms in response.